For Your Ears Only for the week of May 5th, I'm David Alpern.
I'm Eddie Robinson.
I know Republicans are still sorting out what happened in 2012, but one thing they all agree on is they need to do a better job reaching out to minorities. And look, call me self-centered, but I can think of one minority they could start with. Hello? Why don't you get a drink with Mitch McConnell, they ask. Really? Why don't you get a drink with Mitch McConnell?
Do you still have the juice to get the rest of your agenda through this Congress?
Well, if you put it that way, Jonathan, maybe I should just pack up and go home. Golly.
Barack Obama clearly enjoyed mocking political foes, the media, and himself at last weekend's White House Correspondents' Dinner, but he wasn't nearly as comfortable at his news conference days later when questions highlighted both past failures and future challenges on Capitol Hill and around the world. From stalled appointments in Washington and terrorism in Boston to chemical weapons in Syria, the drug war in Mexico, and Guantanamo Bay's ongoing hunger strike by desperate detainees, many of whom had long been cleared for release.
While Obama said he needed more information before taking stronger action against the Assad regime, Israel reported launching an airstrike against missiles there headed for Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. The president also stood by U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies, even as a House committee geared up for hearings on weakness revealed by the Boston Marathon bombings. To consider these and other developments after last weekend's laughs, For Your Ears Only, we're joined again by veteran TV commentator Eleanor Clift, also a contributor at NewsweekDailyBeast.com. Thanks for joining us again.
Glad to be with you.
On Syria, where a death toll of 70,000 is now estimated, we hear there's new consideration of more military aid. But we also hear that Obama won't really do that for fear of helping hostile rebels, much less put troops in. What do you hear?
Well, I think the president is really reluctant to get more militarily engaged in the Syrian conflict. The U.S. is providing what's called non-lethal aid and humanitarian aid, and I think there's some indications that they're going to up that to include night vision goggles and a few other instruments of war, but to stop short of the shoulder-fired missiles, which is what the rebels really want. I think the president is nervous that these weapons could fall into the wrong hands and that you really can't sort out, who the good guys are and the bad guys.
Obama promised yet again to close Guantanamo, as he has since his first campaign. What do you really expect?
I think he's going to see what he can do with executive orders, and he does have the ability to have his Secretary of Defense grant specific waivers to some of the individuals you mentioned who have already been cleared for release. And he said that he's willing to go at it with Congress again, and Congress has imposed restrictions. But the truth is, the president has let this lapse. Prisoners that are associated with terrorism don't generate a lot of sympathy in this country, and I think everybody's been too willing to forget about them. But the hunger strike has really forced these men into our consciousness, and the notion that you hold people indefinitely, men who've been cleared in some instances, or hold them indefinitely without charging them, really does go against the American grain.
Some say that Obama's press conference performance showed weakness, saying it's up to congressional Republicans to move themselves to compromise. Others say it's sad, but true. What's your view?
I think we do have a dysfunctional Congress that relies too often on the filibuster to block even routine measures. And there's a group of House Republicans that really do not want to go along with any of the president's agenda. That's certainly their prerogative, and the president is calling them out. But I think that the bottom line is that he's the leader. He's expected to find a way to govern. And so this is the challenge before him. And I think what upset even his supporters last week is that he sounded kind of beaten down. Where was the Obama with all the hope and the enthusiasm? It's only been, 5 months since he won a pretty resounding re-election. So I think he's got to generate some more enthusiasm, I think, for his own agenda and for the job if he's going to bring along Congress.
Talk about the hope for a second-round victory on gun control, at least in the Senate, following new polls that show plunging popularity for some of those who voted against it.
I think there's a real chance that the Senate is going to come back and before the August recess have another vote and pass the background checks bill. Senator Ayotte of New Hampshire is Exhibit A of someone who voted against that legislation, the only senator in the Northeast to do so, and she's really taken quite a beating in town meetings. So she may welcome the opportunity to vote again on this issue. And the sources I talk to say that they can count some 15 senators who are sick to their stomachs over their votes and are looking for a way to change those votes. And so I think there's a real possibility, and this is rare in the Senate, that they could have basically what amounts to a do-over, and we could get a different outcome.
But even if there is a different outcome in the Senate, doesn't the way the House lines up with safe districts, conservative districts, does it die there in the end anyway?
If it dies there, that'll be next year. I mean, if there's a vote in the Senate, it will be, this summer. It won't be taken up in the House until next year. Next year is an election year, and you've got these gun groups, gun safety groups who have sprung up, who are, for the first time, giving the National Rifle Association some competition out there. And I think, the Democrats believe that this issue could work to their advantage in switching some of those suburban districts next year and give the Democrats a shot. Admittedly, it's a long shot to take back control of the House. So the politics of this, could work out for the president in the long run.
Talk about the way the administration has handled the debate on over-the-counter morning-after contraception, lowering the age requirement to 15, but fighting a judge's order for no age limit at all. Is this a question of science, conscience, or politics?
I think the administration has looked pretty confused on this issue. They're fighting among themselves, and I think if the president didn't have two early teen daughters, there might have been a different outcome. I mean, the young women who need this most, arguably, are those who get pregnant at a way too early age. And setting up barriers to a drug that is considered safe, seems counterproductive. But I think this is the culture wars, and you have a segment of the population that thinks that if you make this kind of after-the-fact contraception available, it will somehow encourage young women to have sex. And then you have people like, I think the president is one of them, who are thinking of it in personal terms of their own daughters and thinking, my goodness, they've just gotten over teddy bears. I don't want to even think that they're ready for this sort of thing. So I think it's more about emotion and then politics than it is about real science.
TV commentator Eleanor Clift is also a contributor at NewsweekDailyBeast.com.
Quote from the news, the biggest source of corruption in Afghanistan was the United States. That was an American official quoted in a New York Times report that Afghan President Hamid Karzai has been receiving large cash payments from the CIA, ostensibly for official purposes, but more likely, many thought, for corrupt payments to maintain his personal power base.
Next, national security lessons from Boston, for your ears only.